That's
goodness.
okay.
We just went through that whole thing with nothing.
Yeah, that's okay. We can start
Okay,
over.
okay, we're going to start over.
Okay.
All right. I just...
Take two.
Take two. We were talking. We were like a few minutes in and I realized I didn't hit the record button. Rookie. I'm a rookie. I'm still very new. I apologize.
We're sure it's on now?
It's on now,
Okay.
100%.
All right.
Orion, I'm so
That's
glad
okay.
that you came on. Thank
Yeah.
you for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just kind of get into it again.
Okay.
I'll slap the table.
There we go.
And where do you want to start?
Okay. Well, I guess we'll start when I'm about 11.
Okay.
And I had my first experience with alcohol with a babysitter that was babysitting my sister and myself.
Yeah.
And loved it from the start and wanted more of it and wanted more of hanging out with kids that were a little bit older than me and feeling accepted sort of for the first time.
Right.
And it was sort of the first time in my life that I'd really felt accepted.
Right.
And I felt like I had a group of people that genuinely liked me and I liked them. And it was really new for me. You know, my whole childhood had pretty much been taking care of my little sister, who's 3 years younger. My mom was an alcoholic and a cocaine addict.
Yeah.
And she was never home. And so my job was basically to take care of my sister. And so my childhood didn't include very many childhood things, you know, and I learned a lot later that my childhood before then had actually been really traumatic. And so I wanted to escape. I wanted out of there. And I started running away on the weekends and going and finding these friends downtown and drinking and started using some drugs and, you know, feeling freedom for the first time in my life. And after one weekend where I left for 4 days, I came home and my mom wasn't there. Nobody was there. There was nothing in the house, and they had moved back to the States. And so I was sort of stranded in Vancouver by myself. I was 11, just about 12 years old.
Yeah.
It was the summer before grade 7. And I remember thinking that they would be back. Mm-hmm. And I kept coming back there every night for the next 2 weeks and slowly coming to the realization that they weren't coming back. And that was a pretty awful realization to come to.
Totally.
I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I had a bunch of friends that were living downtown. They were kind of punk rockers that were sort of anywhere from 15 to 20 years old.
Yeah.
And they were already living on the streets. And, you know, they sort of took me in. And although it felt nice to be accepted into that group at such a young age, I was a big kid. I was already 6'2", and you know, I looked older than my age, and I fit in with this group of people, and I was desperate to fit in with these people actually, because now I really needed this group of people for my survival, right? And so I started to do things that I thought would make them like me more, and you know, one of the things that was a big part of it was I remember the fear, you know, like the first couple nights being on the streets, knowing that I didn't have a safety net of a home to go back to.
Right.
I remember how scared I was, and I remembered that the alcohol calmed that fear. And so alcohol and drugs became a daily part of my life, and staying one step ahead of the police and social services was another big part of my life, because I didn't have any family in Vancouver, and I didn't have any connections really in Vancouver. My whole childhood was spent moving every 3-4 months, and my mom was an American citizen, and my father was in jail at the time. And so for the next 2 years, I just existed on the streets. I lived in a hotel called the Regal Hotel on Lower Granville. I'm 48 years old, almost 49, and in my day, the downtown east side, although it was a thing, it wasn't a thing like it is today. Lower Granville was really where the drug action was at that time. And so I lived in the Regal Hotel with a couple of punk girls and another guy, and it was an absolute shithole.
So you were 11 years old when you first got introduced to alcohol, and
Yeah.
it did all these things for you, and then your parents left, or your mom left you.
Yeah.
That must have really reinforced sort of what alcohol did for you, right?
Oh, big time.
Right.
Yeah. I wouldn't be able to I don't think I would have actually been able to survive without it, because I was just terrified 24 hours a day. You know, I had nothing had prepared me for that life, right?
Right.
You know, I had sort of been dabbling in that life for 3 months, right? And then here I am, boom, I'm a homeless child, right? And so alcohol calmed that fear and made me a little bit braver and a little bit bolder. And I felt like it made me the person I needed to be to survive at the time, you know? Right. And I found myself just trying to fit in desperately, you know? And I was gravitating towards the most dangerous people on the street in that scene, because I felt like it afforded me the best protection, right?
Yeah.
And man, it was a really, really horrific time in my life, to tell you the truth.
So do you remember prior to alcohol and the feelings you had before? Can you recall what was going on in your life and the feelings you had prior to having that first drink, and how you feel that?
Yeah. You know, it was something that I went years. You know, I always, I actually remembered very little of my childhood, almost none of it, prior to about 10 for most of my adult life. And when I finally was able to look at my past and my childhood with the help of a therapist and some other people that sort of walked me through it, I sort of looked behind the curtain at something that had always been there, and I'd known it was always there, but I somehow had blocked it out. And I had experienced sexual abuse from the time I was about 4 years old until the time I was about 9 years old, and pretty regularly. A lady that lived with us from the time I was 7 till the time I was about 9. And prior to that, different boyfriends of my mother and different friends of hers. And it was something that I kind of knew was there, but it was just out of reach, you know? I don't know how to exactly explain it, but I know that it made me feel different. It made me feel worthless in a lot of ways, actually.
Right.
You know, it really made me feel like I wasn't like everybody else, you know, that this had happened to me and it made me different, and it separated me big time. And I believe that at some point during my childhood, I probably dissociated a little bit because I didn't have any tools to deal with what was happening to me. And, you know, I remember when I first saw behind that curtain, it was like a wave that came over me, and these memories just started flooding back. And I was so overwhelmed and shocked by it. And I could feel it, and I could remember it so vividly that I couldn't believe that I had suppressed it for so long and not looked at it. It was that real.
Wow, that's heavy stuff.
It really was. I spent the next 2 days. I talked about it a little bit that day. I was at a retreat when this sort of came up, and I spent the next 2 days literally in a ball crying, you know, and trying to wrap my head around how the fuck I didn't remember this consciously, you know.
How could it have been there so long, and all of a sudden it just pours itself out of you? That's heavy stuff, man. And I really appreciate the vulnerability and you sharing that, because it's huge, you know. And I'm really sorry that stuff happened to you, but I look at you now and the person sitting in front of me, and I'm just in awe of, oh my gosh, you know.
Well, I think that we can use our past to hide and make us small and make us victims, or we can use it to propel us to bigger things.
Right.
And I think part of that is not only being willing to look at that stuff that happened to us, but being willing to share it with others and let them know that it's okay, you know,
that they're not alone.
That they're not alone. That it happened to me for a long time in my life. It made me feel, I think, like less of a man, you know? And that's not the truth. That's not true. And, you know, there's some things in our lives that we don't play a part in, you know, when we're children. There's some things that just happen that aren't our fault, you know,
out of our control.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, so, you know, I've been able to accept that, and, I've been able to start to forgive the people that did that damage to me, because, you know, as hard as that whole concept was for me, I need to be free. And the only way that I can become free is to really let that stuff go. Yeah. And when I started to let it go, it was just like this fucking rock was out of my stomach finally, you know? And this separation, this thing that separated me from everybody, and I didn't know how it was separating me, but it was, you know? I started to feel like it was okay to walk among other people, you know, which is a huge gift, right?
Walking free.
Yeah, walking free. Yeah. That's it, you know?
So when you were 11 and your mom had left and you were starting to hang out with these older guys and trying to fit in this way, where did you kind of go from there?
So I was 14 years old. I was still living on the street, and I was living in the Regal Hotel. Yeah. The door starts banging, and the door gets kicked in, and there's my father. And I hadn't seen him since I was 2 or 3. I didn't even really know it was my father. And he looked at me and he said, "Orion." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm your father. You're coming with me." And he grabbed me by the scruff of my jacket, and he literally pulled me out of there. And he had just gotten released from jail. He'd been in jail for 6 or 7 years. And I hadn't
seen him forever.
No, fuck, I had no clue.
And he just shows up at this hotel and drags you out of there.
Yeah. And
wow. And
to tell you the truth, I was kind of fucking happy. You know, I was like, fuck, maybe this is over, right? Yeah. And for the next 6 months, you know, he got us a place in North Van. I got back to school. I went to a school called Keith Lynn Alternate School in North Van. It's the first time I'd been to school since the 6th grade, and that felt really good. And you know, he started telling me about his life and his experiences, and you know, I found out that he was a heroin addict and a cocaine addict, and he had gotten into drug dealing and a real criminal lifestyle. Yeah. And everything was actually really good. And then slowly I noticed that he started to change a little bit. Yeah. And then I started noticing he was doing drugs, and I saw the drug use starting to happen. And, you know, during that 6 months, I was still drinking on the weekends. I was still seeing my friends and drinking and still using some drugs and stuff. And, but the drug use that I saw him starting to do was very different than any drug use I'd experienced before. So he was shooting cocaine, and for the first month he tried to hide it. And then once he realized that I knew, he just did it openly right in front of me. Yeah. And so I was watching my dad shoot up, you know, all day, every day. And he started selling drugs again full time. And just watching that ritual of him trying to find veins, and, you know, like this guy that I didn't know that all of a sudden comes into my life, that I'm like, fuck, I got a father, you know, this is great. And now I'm watching this deterioration so fast, right? And, you know, within a month, he's putting fucking butter knives in the door. He's in psychosis. Crazy shit's happening. And then he brings a woman into the house who ended up becoming my stepmother. Drugs start go missing. And, you know, she's blaming me for stealing these drugs. I had nothing. I wasn't stealing these drugs, right? So I knew if the drugs were going missing and it wasn't me, it was her. Yeah. And I remember one night, it was about probably 9 or 10 months after I moved in with him. Yeah. I heard them fighting in their bedroom, and she said, "Listen, he's a fucking thief. It's either he's going or I'm going." And when I heard that, I just left. I just put some shit in my backpack and left. And
gone.
Yeah. I couldn't bear to have him kick me out, you know? So I decided to make the decision, right? Wow. And that way it wouldn't be quite so painful.
I can't imagine how the grounds you were on and going through that, and how, you know, you feel like you had just found this person and your mom had left, now your dad's from if you're feeling like this sort of safety, and then things start to deteriorate. You must have been just on shaky ground and completely all over the place.
I was. And I had met some new people in North Van, and I had made some friendships in this alternate school. And I felt like, man, I just had this chance at life again. Yeah. And it's gone.
It's just taken away.
Yeah. And so I went back to what I knew, which was I went back to the street. And I went back to the friends that I had downtown, and I didn't look back. You know, I never talked with those friends that I had made there. And, you know, it's funny because when I think about those friendships that I made in that 10 months, they were some of the most real friendships I'd ever had, because I had never lived anywhere for more than 3 months before. You know, with my mom, we were constantly moving. You know, there was always another guy. There was always another, you know, job. We were always getting kicked out of a house. So I never made any sort of long-term friendships, you know? And I always remember being that kid when I was in elementary school that other parents would say, don't play with that kid, you know? Yeah. So it was, it was really shitty. I remember being on that C-bus ride that night when I left, and thinking, fuck me, you know? And I had a cry on that C-bus ride. And when we started getting close to the dock, I said to myself, okay, you know, fucking suck it up. It's time, you know, you got to put on the game face, basically, right? Because, you know, this shit's not going to fly, you know? And there's no room for tears in that world, right?
Did you know where you were going?
I just knew I was going back downtown. I knew I had friends down there that were still on the street, and I knew how to live there now, right? Like I had learned in that couple of years how to live on the street,
how to be,
how to get by, how to, you know, what hustles I could, you know, make some money with. And, you know, it was a really horrible way to live, because it really forced me to grow up right away, you know, because the consequences, when you're that young and you lack that life experience, you know, you're constantly in situations that you don't realize how dangerous they are until they're dangerous, right? Because you've never been in those situations before. Yeah. So I was really learning on the fly. And, the whole experience with my dad, I mean, you know, with my mom, it's sort of the takeaway for me was, you know, here's a person that's supposed to love you no matter what, right? And, you know, she didn't love me, right? And then here's the other person that's supposed to love me. He didn't love me, obviously. Something's really fucking wrong with me. You know, I'm completely not a lovable person, you know? That was my takeaway from that. Yeah. And, my sort of second stint on the street was a lot different, because I was really pissed off. I was angry now. And I wasn't so much scared. I was angry. You know, I was starting to grow into my body now. I was 6'4". I was a little bit bigger. I was angry, and the drinking was different from that point on, and the drug use was different, because it was like, I don't give a fuck. Yeah. You know? I'm a throwaway, you know, there's no fucking point. Right. And I really turned off my emotions, you know, and, shut down completely. Yeah.
Wow. So from there, you just kept rolling in that until
I was 17 years old. So I was back on the street for, probably another 2.5 years or so. Yeah. My dad had started to get sober in a 12-step program with my stepmom, and they moved to Vancouver Island. Mm-hmm. I spoke with him over the phone, and he said, look, you know, I'm sorry that things got that way. You know, I now know it wasn't you. Things are better now. Why don't you come over to the island? It's beautiful here. You know, get away from that lifestyle over there. It's killing you. So I went over to Vancouver Island, Victoria, and I loved it over there from the first minute I was there. And I met a girl, and she was in Camosun College, so she was going to college, and she was 20, I think, and I told her I was 19, and within a week I was living with this girl, and she was from Salt Spring Island, and I ended up going over and meeting her family on Salt Spring Island, and I fell in love with it. You know, I was a city kid. I'd never seen the country in my life, and so I went to Salt Spring Island, and I just fell in love with it. I met her family. Her dad was a fire chief on Salt Spring Island, and her mom was like a pillar of the Catholic Church over there. She had 2 sisters. It was like a normal family. I'd never seen a normal family before up close. It was like a kid at a zoo almost, you know.
Strange.
Like, it was really fucking strange. And her mom recognized that something was really broken in me, and she was the first person that really showed me unconditional love and acceptance. And we'd have talks, and she got to know me, and I'd disclose some stuff to her that I had never told anybody. And I ended up having 2 children, my first 2 kids with their daughter, and her parents were the closest thing to parents that I ever had.
Wow.
Yeah. Really, really special to me.
Do you still talk to them?
She passed away about 6 years ago from cancer. And he's still alive. I do talk to him. I still talk to my ex as well. I have 2 beautiful kids. My daughter is 28 and my son's 24. Yeah. And they're both awesome, amazing kids. My daughter just had my first grandchild 2 years ago,
Congratulations.
which is really good.
Yeah.
I learned about what a family was from them, and what a family does for each other. There was definitely some bumps along the way. I didn't really have any skills, you know. I didn't have any schooling. They bought me a computer. Her mom was kind of trying to find out what maybe interested me. Yeah. And I had remembered that I had an Atari when I was a kid and I really liked it. And so she said, well, maybe computer, you know. So they bought me like this $5,000 computer, and I was just blown away. And I just took to it like crazy. Loved it. I learned loved it. Learned how to program myself, taught myself everything there was to know about computers, programming, building networks. This was pre-internet, right? So right. IRC and bulletin boards and stuff like this. I started doing some hacking, and I just loved it, right? And the issue. So my drinking really had subsided after I'd met Leanna, the mother of my 2 kids, and once I started getting comfortable in Salt Spring, I started having this fear that it was all going to get taken away. And I didn't know how to deal with the feelings that I was having. And I started drinking again because I remembered that drinking helps me deal with the feelings and keep them down. Right. And so I started drinking to keep these feelings under control. And that started to lead to some problems in the relationship and in my life, because I never drank like a normal person. You know, I remember the first time I heard that normal people don't drink to get drunk every time. I was shocked. I thought that's why everybody. I thought that was the only point of alcohol. Wouldn't you? Yeah, absolutely. Right? I literally was shocked when I found that out, and because I drank for effect from the first time that I drank, and so I was drinking every day, and it was beginning to become a problem in my life, and they were recognizing that it was a problem, everybody around me, and I went to my first AA meeting on Salt Spring Island, and it was the first time I'd been introduced to a 12-step program, and it was really cool. I remember really enjoying the meeting, and I remember when I first got there was because Salt Spring's a really small place, there was only maybe 10 people in the meeting. None of them looked like me. They were mostly 40 to 70 years old. And but when they started talking, they were talking about things that I understood, feeling different, being you know, not fitting in, being scared, you know, feeling like they didn't connect with other people. And I instantly recognized that in them. And I instantly recognized, hey, I'm one of these guys.
It's like they knew you were coming.
Absolutely. And so I heard my story, like the first month I started going to this 12-step program, I heard my story over and over and over again from people that looked nothing like me, you know. But I was still a very young man, and was not ready to concede that alcohol was my master at this point of time at all. And, you know, I remember there's hearing at one of these meetings that, you know, people try all of these different ways to drink like a gentleman, you know, switching from scotch to brandy and so forth, you know, drinking only on weekends, you know, taking a trip, not taking a trip. And so, I mean, I tried all of those and then some. And I think actually in the book it says we could increase the list ad infinitum, right? And I could do that as well. I tried every single way to drink like a gentleman. And I kept coming back to the point that when I started putting alcohol in my body, I had to keep going, and I didn't want to stop. And you know, I was so scared to lose what I had found. Like it just terrified me so much that I had that I couldn't deal with even being in the situation that I loved so much, right? So alcohol was the only thing that I had found that would suppress those feelings and let me function even, right? And so it was my main coping mechanism. And so although when I went to those meetings, I found like-minded people, and I felt people that I met people that understood me, legitimately understood me. I had no other way to cope with what was going on for me emotionally, because I was nowhere near ready to start doing the work that's required to start healing
and going through it. So when did recovery, when was that click for you? You know, like you were saying, you were going to meetings, you weren't ready to do it. You were trying to prove to yourself, drinking all these different ways to I'm normal.
So between 24 and 30 years old, I probably had a month sober 40 times, you know, like I just could not put 2 days back to back. I was trying to find novel ways to quit, you know, like, so I was going to this 12-step meetings and they were saying, look, we have a way, we have a solution to your problem. You know, if you follow these simple steps, you will recover. And I would think, no, I'm different, right? You know, I'm a little younger than you guys. Thanks. You know, this might work for your generation, but you know, we're a bit different, right? You don't know where I come from, right? You don't know who I think I am, right? So I wanted to sort of craft it to suit my own needs. And so I just kept running right into this brick wall. And the biggest issue for me was that in this 12-step meeting, I started hearing this word God. And
throws you back, right?
Fuck, man, it beyond threw me back. You know, if there was a God, my feeling was that he wasn't for me. Right? Because
where was he?
Yeah, where was he, man? Like, I was a kid. I didn't deserve to go through what I went through, and there was no God. When I was crying out for help, when I was scared and alone, where was this guy, right? So I was really pissed off with anybody that would say that they were God, right? I wasn't having any of it, right? So that was my biggest problem, was that I didn't have... I wasn't even remotely willing to be open enough to the idea that there could even be anything, because if there was no way that any kind of loving, kind creator would let me suffer the way I suffered, is how I felt. And so for 6 years, I beat my head against a wall. I tried to recover over and over and over. I was probably in detox 20 times. You know, I was drinking a Mickey in the shower before leaving the house. You know, it progressed really drastically. But again, I had no other solution. I didn't understand how to deal with my emotions. I had them shut off since I was really young, you know, and now they're, you know, whenever they came up, I just didn't understand them. I didn't know how to deal with them. They scared the shit out of me. caused me to do crazy things. And, you know, I got to this place when I was about 30 years old where I was at a point in my life where, from the outside looking in, people would think I was relatively successful. I had progressed in my computer stuff. I was working for a company called Methanex as their chief technology officer, which is a position that normally you're 50 years old when you get. I had people working for me in 19 different countries. You know, I was making more than $100,000 a year, and but I was miserable and
high functioning.
Yeah, but I wanted to die, really, and so I got to this point where I just couldn't. The alcohol wasn't working anymore, and I had no other way to deal with these feelings. So I was really, you know, at this jumping off place, this dark night of the soul kind of place where I just didn't know what to do. And I had never been suicidal through all the stuff I'd gone through. I had always had this optimism, you know. I was a survivor, you know. I wasn't going to let life beat me down. So I'd always sort of fought it, you know. I could put my fists up, put my head down, and just go right at it. And there was a guy who had sponsored me for years, and he never gave up on me. And I called him one night, and after yet another relapse, and I said, I just wanted to call and say goodbye. And thank you for caring enough about me to keep trying, but I'm broken beyond repair, and I can't do this anymore. The pain's too much, and my only coping mechanism isn't working anymore, and I love you, goodbye, basically. And he was the only person that I talked to. I didn't leave any letters or nothing. And he said to me, I'll never forget what he said to me on the phone. He said, you know, are you willing to, or he said, did you give God a shot yet? And I said, no. And he said, why the fuck not? And I said, because if I give him a shot and he lets me down too, then what? And he said, then what? You're about to kill yourself, kid. And that really, really hit me for some reason, because I thought, what the fuck, right? Wow. And he said, I hope you try, because, you know, you don't have to do this. And I hung up, and I was just in tears. I was coming apart at my soul, right? And I remember just falling to my knees and saying, okay, if you're there, fucking now, right? I need you, right? Yeah. And as scared and hopeless as I'd felt a minute before, I was overcome by complete and total calm.
Really?
Yeah. And that's a feeling that I never could shake after that, because it was total irrefutable proof to me that there was something else, because I was just absolutely protected. And I firmly believe that at that moment I got some grace, right?
You felt it?
Oh, I felt it big time. Yeah.
So from there, you must, what did you do?
So from there, I remember I called this guy the next day, and I said, yeah, I decided to give what you said a shot. And I said I had an amazing experience. It was kind of like a experience. Yeah. And he said, I thought something like that might happen. And he said, are you ready to do the work? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so we started working in the steps, right? And man, that was a huge turning point in my life, because I think what happened that night was, you know, I just screamed at the universe for help, and a God that I didn't understand or believe in. I said, if you're there, help me right now. I need you, because I'm going.
Screamed right back.
Yeah. And wow. And from that minute forward, I felt like I had enough grace, and that gave me the courage that I needed, the space that I needed to do the work, right? And so I went through the steps with somebody, this 12-step program I was involved in. And, you know, during that process, you have to look inwards, and you look at what's going on inside, right? And it was the first time, yeah. And it's the first time I'd ever looked. And he said to me, your problem really isn't alcohol or drugs. He said, that was your solution, right? Mm. Your problem is that you got some big hole in your soul, and you need a power that's outside of you, to give you that strength to do the next right thing and to start to heal, right?
Yeah.
And so I went through these steps with another man, which was also something really new, because I didn't really let many people in. I had a really hard time trusting. It's not a default for me to trust.
Yeah.
And by the time I'd finished that set of steps, I felt like a new person, and I felt like I had a mission, right? And it was to work with other alcoholics and addicts, right?
Yeah.
It was remarkable, right? So
from that point, you started working with people, you got involved, you were into it. I get this question a lot from people, and it's a lot of people feel like alcoholism and addiction is a choice. And I mean, to some extent, sure, but when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, and after listening everything you've gone through, and you can't trust, because the people who have loved you the most have walked out of your life, and they've walked into your life. No wonder you can't open up. And God, like I feel that. So when it comes to, I need something for the pain, it's almost automatic.
Yeah.
You skip the step of choice, and you just need something.
Yeah.
Right.
It was definitely not a choice. It was this works. Everything else is way too painful.
Right. And then you got to a place where, hey, this is it.
Yeah.
So you got sober, you're rolling along, and
yeah, I started a company. I've got 35 guys working for me.
Yeah.
Life is good,
Yeah.
right? The goose hung high, right?
Yeah.
I read a book with that in it, and things were good, and I was really involved in the 12-step program, and I did some spiritual retreats, which started to open my eyes to some of the trauma that I had experienced as a child, and helped me start looking at some of that stuff for the first time, and growing, and I just got really busy with life. I became a workaholic, and I think I transferred a lot of the, when you come from where I came from, and then you can put your energy to work in the regular world.
Yeah.
There's no consequences, right? If you make a wrong choice, you're not going to die or be hurt by another person or go to jail.
Yeah.
You might lose a contract, right?
Yeah.
So that allows you to just go into life full force, right? And to just really create, and to really build, and to really do well, right? And so I found that when I applied the same skills that had helped me to survive in some really dangerous situations, and when I turned those defects to assets, it was really powerful.
Huge.
Yeah. And so I was able to become really successful, and I sort of started to forget my story, and forget where I'd come from, and forget the pain and hopelessness where I'd been. I stopped, I'd been going to these 12-step meetings where I'd been hearing a message of hope, and I slowly started sort of pulling back from that stuff and focusing more on, life. I wanted to, achieve, get the next house, marry the nice girl, et cetera, et cetera. I had the opportunity to travel around the world and live around the world, and that opened my eyes to a whole new side of life that I'd never experienced before.
Yeah. You were next level. You were getting well, and you were just launching.
Yeah.
And you were consumed by it.
Yeah.
And it was good.
Yeah.
Right.
And I hurt my back very badly. I broke my back, and I was in the hospital, and I said to the doctor, I said, listen, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and my dad was a heroin addict, and my mom was a cocaine addict. I don't want any morphine. And the doctor said, oh, we've got something for you. It's called Oxycontin, and non-addictive, perfect, will kill your pain, no problem. So sure, great, and so I started taking Oxycontin, and my pain was gone, and it was amazing. It felt like it made me even function better, and so over the next 2 years, I'm taking Oxycontin as prescribed by the doctor, although I'm building up a tolerance to it. So my dose is going up, but I'm just eating them, like prescribed on the bottle. And all of a sudden, my doctor loses his license for over-prescribing. And so at my appointment, I go in and there's a new doctor there. And I said, hey, where's my doctor? And he said, oh, he's not a doctor anymore. He lost his license. So let's see what he was prescribing you. So I was being prescribed, I think, 5 Oxy 80s a day.
Wow.
Yeah, which is
non-addictive Oxy 80s. I can't believe they were calling them non-addictive.
Yeah, well, that's, that was the whole thing with Oxycontin. They were marketed as a non-addictive alternative to opiates.
Wow.
And that, in the States, there was a $4 billion settlement, right? In Canada, I was involved with a class action suit here, and I think our settlement was $20 million in Canada. So compared to the States, a far cry.
Yeah.
But when I saw that new doctor, he said, listen, I can't prescribe these for you anymore because we now know that they're very harmful. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do about my pain? And he said, well, the problem is you're probably physically addicted to these things now, and we're going to have to put you on something called methadone. And I said, okay, well, what's methadone, right? Well, it's something that we normally put heroin addicts on and, opiate addicts on, and it makes them not be addictive. And I said, well, I don't fucking need that. I've never done heroin. And he said, okay, well, just let's see how you feel. Come back on Monday. This was a Thursday. By Monday morning when I got there, I was in full withdrawal because my prescription had run out. I was shaking. I was sweating. I was throwing up. I was coming apart at the seams. And I realized that I was completely wired to the Oxycontin. And he said, okay, you want to give methadone a try now? And I said, is it going to stop what I'm feeling now? And he said, yeah. And so he said, it's going to kill your pain and it's going to, take this feeling away. Yeah. Right. So I took the doctor's advice again, and that started my journey on methadone. And, so I was on methadone for several years, and I moved to Alberta, and the methadone stopped because there was a break between getting onto the new methadone program in Alberta, and it was a very sudden move to Alberta, and I've never been so sick in my life, and I went to the street to try to find methadone, and I couldn't find methadone. Somebody said, look, heroin will fix you up. And I tried heroin for the first time, and fentanyl. And that was the start of a really dark period for me. Yeah.
Holy cow. So now you're in Alberta, and you're using heroin.
Yeah.
After you've gone through this whole road of sobriety and finding out who you are and where you're at, and now you're here. So how long did that run on?
So I was in Alberta sort of using in the closet, nobody knew. I thought nobody knew for about 16 months.
Yeah.
And by this point I was with a new wife, and I had 2 young children. And we decided to move back to BC. And on the way back to BC, my wife at the time told me that when we got back to BC, we were going to be splitting up, and that she was going to be taking the girls. So she knew something was different with me. She didn't know what it was. She had never known me drunk or high, and for her, when I was taking the pills or the methadone, that was fine. That was from the doctor, but she was suspecting that I was going to the street and using street drugs, and she wasn't having any of it. Right. And my daughters were 6 and 8 years old at the time. And so I was pretty shocked, to say the least. I'd been with this woman for 9 years, and she just told me that that's it, we're finished. It took me totally by surprise, and I didn't know how to deal with it at all. I started having some severe anxiety and some I was just beyond upset. And I was thinking that, the last 8 years I had provided my girls with a stable home. I hadn't missed a day of their life, and now they were going to be taken away from me. And I didn't react well. And by the time I got back to BC, I started full-blown into the street drugs, heroin daily.
Right back into it.
I was able to hang on to the appearance of a normal life for about a year, and then started going downhill very quickly. Mm-hmm. And 2 years after I got back, I was homeless and I was back on the street. So it was full circle.
Wow. So you went from this wild success and doing well to right back to being homeless.
Yeah. And no contact with my family for 3 years. So I haven't to this day seen my girls. It's been 3 years since I've seen them. I didn't miss a day with them before. I haven't spoken with them or seen them since. I didn't speak with my oldest daughter. I haven't met my grandchild. So for 3 years, I literally just shut everybody out. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want anybody to see me like that. First of all, I was totally embarrassed. And I felt completely alone, isolated, and hopeless, right?
Yeah. So what happened? Like how'd you come out of it?
So, along the way, I'd met some people, that had, continued to believe in me, in spite of myself. Mm-hmm. And, although they didn't know me during the successful times, they saw that this wasn't me, and so I'd been getting some encouragement, to try to turn my life around. And, to be quite honest, during that 3 years, I didn't even try. It felt just so totally futile and hopeless, and I was resigned to just, go on till the end, right?
Yeah.
And during that 3 years, I had involvement with the criminal justice system. I mean, the last 2 months I lived in a tent, and I mean, it was just beyond a nightmare for me, and I just couldn't see any way out of it, and the drugs seemed to be the last of my problems to me at the time.
Right.
And, I was walking through a McDonald's parking lot, and my sister drove in and saw me, and I hadn't seen my sister in 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, my little sister. And she said, what are you doing? We've been looking for you. We thought you were dead. And what are you doing? And I was sitting in her car, and she had a brand new vehicle. I'm sitting in it. I became instantly aware of the fact that I looked at my clothes, and I was pretty filthy, and I was starting to be self-conscious of that fact. Yeah. Which is just kind of bizarre. But she's trying to give me a hug and say, I love you, brother. What are you doing? Like, look at where you're at right now. You have children that need you. You have a granddaughter that needs you. I need you. And I thought that they, as much as I shut them out, I thought that they probably didn't want anything to do with me either. And
that's right where your head goes.
Yeah. And she said, no, we've been looking for you, and we didn't know where you were. You knew where we were. And, I'm so glad I found you. So that very night I called, and I went into, I started to do a detox at someone's home. And that night when I got to this lady's home, she's a lady in the community that I was in that takes people into detox and then gets them into treatment. I got to this lady's house, and she said, okay, this is the room you're going to be staying in. And I was so exhausted and just so done and worn out. I fell to my knees, and I said, if you're still there, I need you, because I can't fucking do this anymore. And I really felt like I didn't deserve another chance almost, because I'd had the gifts of recovery and I'd kind of thrown them away. And, it took me 8 years to get back to this spot, even though I'd had such a miraculous experience the first time around. Even though I knew that it could work, I didn't believe that I deserved it, right? Was what it got down to. And I just fell to my knees and I asked again for help, and it was right there, and so I was there for 3 days, and then I came over to Maple Ridge to Intervisions, and it's funny because I had to phone in every day for 3 days, and they answered the phone, Intervisions, where miracles happen. And I thought it was so corny. But you know what? When I got there, I realized that that's the truth. That's where miracles happen. This place was a place that was started by a man who got sober, and at 6 months sober, he had a dream that he was going to build the best, as he says, mother humping treatment center in Canada. Yeah. And that's what he did. And so since 1991, Intervisions has helped thousands of people recover, men and women. And, so when I got there, I remember, just taking a look around, taking it all in. And I got to my bed and I just breathed really a sigh of relief for the first time. And I thought, okay, it's over. It's over. I'm safe now, right? And so that place gave me the space and this safe little bubble where I was able to remember what I'd lost, right? And so I got back into working on these steps in this 12-step program, and reconnecting with my higher power, and man, the rest is history. It's been 3 months now, and if you had told me 3 months ago where I'd be today, I would not have believed you.
I wouldn't have believed it.
Not a chance, right? It's miraculous. It's literally miraculous.
Wow. From
a state of desperation and hopelessness to being restored, and it's beautiful.
It's incredible, man. Yeah. That's a big story.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing and like going over all this. If there's anything that you could say to people that are struggling out there, what would you say to them? What would be your best piece of advice?
Not to give up. That there is hope, and I thought there was no help out there for me, but when I reached out my hand for help, there was more help available than I would have ever believed, and all that was required on my part was a little bit of willingness, and a willingness to join the fight, right? To
reach out.
Yeah, to reach out.
You just got to
just reach out, and there's help right there. And man, there is a life worth living, because I really wanted to die, and today I'm excited when I wake up, and I'm ready to take the world on again, right?
Cool,
and it's
man.
awesome.
That's awesome. That's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come give you a hug, because
okay.
that was awesome, dude. For you. I hope you can come back.
Yeah. Awesome. That was awesome, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much.